were thin of flank. They were also wary. One of them saw the beady eyes watching in the rushes. It leaped for shelter, and the others followed. At once, the adult stoats were covering ground, twin stretches of brown rippling across the open space. The rabbits bolted down into their warrens. Without pause, the stoats followed. They could go anywhere. The world, this tiny piece of the world, was theirs. Not many miles away, under the same tattered winter sky and by the banks of the same river, the wilderness had been cleared. In the wilderness, a pattern was still discernible. It was no longer a valid pattern, and so it faded year by year. Large trees, to some of which a raddled leaf still clung, marked the position of ancient hedges. They enclosed tangles of vegetation covering what had once been fields, brambles lacerating their way like rusty barbed wire towards the centre of the fields, and elders and prickly briars, as well as a sturdy growth of saplings. Along the edge of the clearing, these unruly hedges had been used as a stockade against further growth in a wide and ragged arc, thus protecting an area of some few hundred acres that had its longer side against the river. This rude stockade was patrolled by an old man in a coarse shirt of orange, green, red, and yellow stripes. The shirt furnished almost the only splash of colour in the entire bedraggled landscape. It had been made from the canvas of a deck chair. At intervals, the barrier of vegetation was broken by paths trodden into the undergrowth. The paths were brief and ended in crude latrines, where holes had been dug and covered with tarpaulins or wooden battens. These were the sanitary arrangements of the village of Sparcot. The village itself lay on the river in the middle of its clearing. It had been built, or rather it had accumulated in the course of centuries in the shape of an H, with the crossbar leading to a stone bridge spanning the river. The bridge still spanned the river, but led only to a thicket from which the villagers gathered much of their firewood. Of the other two longer roads, the one nearer the river had been intended to serve only the needs of the village. This it still did. One leg of it led to an old watermill where lived Big Jim Mole, the boss of Sparcot. The other road had once been a main road. After the houses petered out, it led in each direction into the stockaded wilderness of vegetation. There it was dragged down like a snake in a crocodile's throat and devoured under the weight of the undergrowth. All the houses of Sparcot showed signs of neglect. Some were ruined. Some were uninhabited ruins. 112 people lived here. None of them had been born in Sparcot. Where two of the roads joined, there stood a stone building that had served as a post office. Its upper windows commanded a view of both the bridge in one direction and the cultivated land with wilderness beyond in the other. This was now the village guardroom, and since Jim Mole insisted that a guard always be kept, it was occupied now. There were 3 people sitting or lying in the old barren room. An old woman, long past her 80th year, sat by a wood stove, humming to herself and nodding her head. She held out her hands to the stove, on which she was warming up stew in a tin platter. Like the others, she was wrapped against a wintry chill that the stove did little to dispel. Of the 2 men present, one was extremely ancient in appearance, although his eye was bright. He lay on a palliasse on the floor, restlessly looking about him, staring up at the ceiling as if to puzzle out the meaning of the cracks there, or at the walls as if to solve the riddle of their damp patches. His face, sharp as a stoat's beneath its stubble, wore an irritable look, for the old woman's humming jarred his nerves. Only the 3rd occupant of the guardroom was properly alert. He was a well-built man in his middle 50s, without a paunch, but not so starveling thin as his companions. He sat in a creaking chair by the window, a rifle by his side. Although he was reading a book, he looked up frequently, directing his gaze through the window. With one of these glances, he saw the patrolman with the colourful shirt approaching over the pastures. "Sam's coming," he said. He put his book down as he spoke. His name was Algie Timberlane. He had a thick, grizzled beard that grew down.